When people ask me whether it's true that Apple is finished, whether the company is standing on the edge of something irreversible, I always begin with a simple thought. In business, the end never arrives suddenly unless the company was built on sand, and Apple has never been built on sand. Yet today I want to tell a story about how even giants find themselves facing challenges they don't always control. A story about why, as an investor, I remember one thing above all. Nothing lasts forever, but decline is never final when a business is built on philosophy, culture, and the willingness to listen to reality. Because when you hear loud headlines like "Apple is finished," the real question isn't whether they're true, but why people begin thinking that way, and what's actually happening beneath the surface. I've always had great respect for Apple. When we first bought shares of the company, many said we were late to the party, that the best days were already behind them, that without Steve Jobs, the company wouldn't be able to move forward. But back then, years ago, I said one simple thing. I don't invest in the past. I invest in people, in culture, and in decision-making ability. And that's exactly what allowed Apple to become one of the most valuable companies in the world. But if you think that a company of this scale can grow forever in a straight line, remember the philosophy of the market. It breathes, it moves, and no trajectory is perfectly straight. Today, Apple is facing challenges that have been building for years. This is not a collapse, not a catastrophe, not the final page of its history. It's simply a moment when reality demands attention, honesty, and a willingness to adjust course. When I look at Apple today, I see a company that has been a symbol of perfection for too long. And the problem with being seen as perfect is that the moment anything slips, the reaction is twice as sharp. I've always said, expectations are the greatest enemy. Not competitors, not technology, not macroeconomics, expectations. Imagine that every year people expect a miracle from you. Every year they look at the new iPhone and say, well, what will you show us now? But no one understands that real innovation doesn't have to be dramatic. Sometimes the most important changes are invisible. Quiet evolution, incremental improvement. But the market rarely loves incremental. It loves spectacle. And when Apple does not deliver a spectacle, the world begins writing its obituary. Today, Apple is experiencing something that rarely happens at this scale. Its own success has become its weakness. When your product becomes so dominant that it defines the entire industry, enormous responsibility appears on your shoulders. And the larger your share of the market, the stronger the pressure. Not because competitors are catching up, but because you've already taken almost everything there was to take. Yes, more people around the world use smartphones, but the market is not infinite. And today, Apple isn't fighting for growth, it's fighting for retention. But retention is always harder than catching up. When you're on top, you don't have the luxury of mistakes. Any misstep seems like a threat to the whole structure. But that's how business works. Mistakes are inevitable. And right now, Apple is paying the price for several years when it relied too heavily on the habits of success, on the belief that a powerful brand would carry it automatically. But a brand is not armor. It's a promise. And when you stop strengthening that promise with something new, people start to feel that maybe everything is ending. Many say, Buffett warned. Buffett is selling Apple shares. And I always respond, I don't sell companies. I sell access to their future cash flows when I think they're temporarily overvalued or when the market becomes too optimistic. That's not a criticism of Apple. That's simple investment mechanics. But the media loves drama, and drama is always found where headlines can shout. And now they shout, Apple is finished. But that's not the truth. That's the echo of people who only see the top of the iceberg. Today, Apple faces questions it genuinely needs to answer. And if I were sitting across from the CEO, speaking the same way I'm speaking to you now, I would tell him what I tell any leader. You've been following one formula for too long. A great formula, a successful formula, but still a formula. iPhone, services, accessories, ecosystem. An incredible machine. But even the best machine needs new fuel. The world is changing. It demands new decisions, new directions, new risks. And Apple knows this. It has never been a company that lives in the past. But sometimes even giants get trapped in the glow of their own history. People ask, so what's actually happening? What triggered the talk of an ending? I'd put it this way. Apple has reached a saturation point. Not decline, not crisis, saturation. A moment when every next step requires far more effort, time, resources, and risk than before. In earlier years, every new product direction felt natural and obvious. Today, every new direction is a leap into uncertainty. And it's this leap that separates companies that remain great from those that vanish. But I believe Apple knows how to leap. It always has. Yes, smartphone sales are no longer growing at past rates. Yes, services face more competition. Yes, new product lines don't appear as frequently as investors want. But these are not signs of the end. They are signs of transition. A difficult, sometimes painful transition. But transition is part of growth. Any company that reaches Apple's scale must go through a moment when old methods are no longer enough and new ones are not yet ready. It's like standing at the start of a bridge that hasn't been built yet. You feel the wind, you hear the echo below, but you know the bridge will be built. It just takes time. And when I say Apple is not finished, I'm not trying to soothe anyone. I'm simply speaking as an investor who has seen dozens of similar stories. I've watched companies survive ups and downs, visible and invisible crises, the loss of leaders, strategic mistakes, missed markets, product failures, and none of these meant the end. The end comes only when a company stops learning, and Apple is not one of those companies. Right now, they're in a period of reevaluation. Quiet, internal, consistent with their culture. And historically, Apple's biggest leaps have always arrived when nobody expected them. No one believed they would create a smartphone that would change the world. No one believed a computer could become an object of desire. No one believed music would become a digital ecosystem instead of a simple MP3 player. And no one believed Apple would become the most valuable company in history. And yet, it did. So today, when someone once again says Apple is finished, I smile. Because this is not the first time the world has buried Apple. And every single time, Apple returns stronger. Because this company has something that cannot be measured in financial reports. Something that cannot be seen in unit sales. It is culture. It is persistence. It is a different way of looking at the world. And as long as that remains, talk of the end is meaningless. Still, as an investor, I must look reality in the eye. And reality is this: Apple cannot grow easily anymore. It must seek new frontiers, perhaps in artificial intelligence, perhaps in health, perhaps in entirely new types of personal devices we cannot yet imagine. I don't know. And believe me, no one knows. But I know this: if Apple chooses risk, chooses experimentation, chooses the path of new horizons, it will surprise the world again. And if it chooses to remain comfortable, to rely on old formulas, then things could eventually change. Not quickly, not suddenly, but slowly, like they always do when a great brand stops moving. But that's not what's happening now. Right now, Apple is simply at a crossroads. And a crossroads is not the end. It's a beginning. It's the moment when a company decides who it will be for the next 20 years. And if you ask me whether you should worry, I'll answer the same way I've answered dozens of times in situations like this. Only those who see a company as a myth should worry, because myths can die. But real foundations, real culture, real people, they keep working, and they're the ones who determine the future. When I think about Apple's future, I think about a company